Aston Martin's DB cars have been some of the most iconic and beautiful ever to grace the road. Is the DB11 worthy of the name? Here's Motor1's guide to what we like, what we don't like, and what the best specification would be when making your choice. Let's be real here, Aston Martin rarely designs an ugly car, and this one is no different. Okay, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but still, it's a pretty thing, though dark colours do suit it best. The design on here isn't simply to look pretty, it is functional too. So the vents just behind the front wheels, those are to relieve pressure and aid aerodynamics. And you'd think a car capable of 200 miles an hour would maybe need a spoiler. And you'd think correctly. But this one doesn't appear to have one. That's because air is forced in through a vent in the C-pillar, funneled through the car and then out again in a vent in the spoiler. And that basically creates an air spoiler, aiding high-speed stability. Admittedly, there is a little spoiler if you go super hardcore, but for the day-to-day, air will do. You'd expect an Aston Martin GT to come with a manual gearbox and a naturally aspirated engine so that anyone who drives one can fulfill their childhood fantasies of pretending to be Sean Connery, puns and all, but not so in the DB11. This one has turbos. You see, unlike its predecessor, the naturally aspirated V12 DB9, this has a smaller 5.2 litre V12 engine, but with two turbochargers attached. It has more power and torque than the old car, 600 brake horsepower and 516 pound-foot. That means it's good for 0 to 60 in just 3.9 seconds. A DB11 is likely to be a hugely personal purchase. As such, there's a ton of customization options both inside and out. But it's not just body colour and interior colour you can fiddle with. You can choose the colour of your cant rail, or even the roof, or even have gold specified under the bonnet, and change the hue of your grille. Inside is infinitely customizable as well. You can have the seats in a number of colours, but also quilted and or brogued if you're into that kind of thing. Now, if the standard options aren't really for you, you can always have a word with Aston Martin's Q division, who'll whip you up whatever you fancy. Good news, the DB11 is a Grand Tourer, which means it's been designed to take two people long distances in great comfort. Bad news, well, you can't take much stuff or a third person to keep you company. You see, the boot has 270 litres of space, which sounds like a lot, but in reality, it's enough for a decent weekend trip and a weekly shop, and that's about it. The seats in the back aren't suitable for fully grown adults, occasional use and children only, or maybe just somewhere handy to put your bag. Aston Martin is part-owned by Mercedes, and in exchange for a chunk of the company, Aston gets some of Merc's technical expertise in exchange, which is fantastic news from the off, but it does mean a few bits from Stuttgart are creeping in. For example, there are little bits of switchgear here and there, which you recognise from a Merc, but the biggest thing is the infotainment system. Now, infotainment systems that Aston Martin have made in days gone by, they've been a bit hit and miss, mostly miss, so it is a good thing. However, you can get a very similar system on a 50 grand exec saloon. It rather takes the shine off your 100 grand plus premium GT, doesn't it? This is a hugely powerful car, and considering it weighs nearly 2 tons and is mentally fast, it's also wonderfully comfortable, but it's been tuned to be a GT after all, so you can drive it a couple hundred miles and get out the other end feeling pretty fresh. That said, if you do want to play with all 600 horses, you will have a ton of fun, especially if you press the S button, stick it into Sport Plus and press the noisy pedal. However, because all of its turbo torque comes in quite low down, it can get a little bit twitchy in the wet. So if you are planning a high-speed, damp drive out, well, pack your brave trousers. If you're in the market for a super luxury premium GT, your choices are limited but fantastic, and the DB11 is a brilliant motor car. Now, should you buy it? Oh yes, this falls firmly into our buy category. So you're looking for some Aston Martin in your life. Fantastic. Here's what we'd do to it. First of all, with the colours, spec something dark. While it is a very good looking car, lighter hues don't suit it as well as the darker ones. But don't stop there. Make sure the cant rail that goes over the window line is in a body colour or a dark colour, because if you go for a dark body and a light cant rail, you might look like you're driving a stylised shopping bag. Not ideal. Same goes for the interior really. You can go for quilted and brogued leather, and with a jazzy colour that can look a little bit much, but if you're into that kind of thing, go for it. I'm not your mother. The infotainment system can come with a touchpad, but you can remove it. I'd advise doing that, mostly because it's not that useful and it takes up a lot of space in the centre console. You can spec things like a garage door opener and auto park, but you don't really need those. However, make sure to spec blind spot monitoring to avoid any side swipes, and get some paint protection film on there to keep your paint job looking shinier for longer. Also, you can spec heated and ventilated seats. You should certainly do that, because you know what? Sometimes your bum deserves some love too. What do you think of our ideal Aston Martin DB11? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Let us know in the comments below. If you like the video, don't forget to, well, like the video and of course subscribe to the channel.